Hello, and welcome to Tune In with MPSCS. I'm Tim Lee, Deputy Director and Manager of the IT and Network Operations for the Michigan Public Safety Communications System, also known as MPSCS. We are celebrating the 30th anniversary of MPSCS, and I'm excited to welcome a very special guest, someone who's experienced the early days of the statewide radio communications transition, going from regular analog over to digital. And today we are with retired First Lieutenant Joe Thomas. He's former post commander of the MSP Lansing Post and has been in internal affairs, the ES team, emergency support team. He's been a trooper on many different posts. I don't know all of those posts, but obviously we're going to talk about all that today. So Lieutenant Thomas served with Michigan State Police from which year? When did you start?
I became a trooper in 1987 and I retired in 2018.
And you were what was the first post that you were stationed at?
My first post was Flat Rock, Michigan, downriver, just south of Detroit. I served at Flat Rock for the first 8 years, and then I came to Lansing and worked in recruiting as a trooper and did a short stint at training division as a trooper at that time. From there, I went back out to the field, went to the Lansing Post as a trooper, served there for a short period of time, then got promoted back to headquarters as a sergeant. Worked as a sergeant in traffic services and then worked at district as a traffic services sergeant. Got promoted back to headquarters as a lieutenant in internal affairs. Served in internal affairs for 3 years, and we discussed that. It was 3 very valuable years with the agency. From internal affairs, I went to Flint Post as an assistant post commander, then Lansing Post as an assistant post commander because that brought me back home because I've maintained my home here in the Lansing area since 1995. Came back to headquarters and worked in operations for a number of years and then got promoted as a detective first lieutenant in charge of the MIAC. Ran the Intel Center for a year and then went out to Jackson Post as a post commander. Served there for a year, and then the Lansing Post opened up as a post commander's position. So then I finished my last 4 years at the Lansing Post as a post commander and retired.
Wow. That's quite a few. And now in between there,
yes,
you were actually assigned, you were on the emergency support team.
Yep, became a member of the emergency support team in 1996. I came on the team as a trooper, and within a 5-year period, I went from being a trooper to being a lieutenant, and that's when I got the promotion in internal affairs. And at that point, my job as an internal affairs lieutenant was a little bit more busy or cumbersome, that I didn't have time to be out during the middle of the night on the ES team. So then I gave up being on the ES team. So I served a short period on the team, but it was a very educational period on the team as well.
And served with a lot of different people on the team, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you mentioned where you live in East Lansing already, but you've got family and how many kids? And...
born and raised in the city of Detroit. Attended school at Detroit Catholic Central, then on to college at Wayne State University. Then after Wayne State University is when I joined the state police. Number of relatives worked for Detroit Police Department, and that's where I developed the interest in law enforcement. I had relatives that worked in narcotics. Some relatives worked in specialty units, traffic units, and things like that. So it was always kind of in the back of my mind, this law enforcement career. So after Wayne State University, I decided at that time I would become a state trooper because I wanted to kind of broaden my horizons. I didn't want to be locked into the city of Detroit. I wanted to be able to get around a little bit more, not really wanting to be a federal agent, possibly. So I thought the state police was a good fit for me. Shortly after I joined the state police, I actually met my wife a year after joining the state police, so she got to spend the entire career with me.
Okay. Yeah.
Met my wife a year after state police. We were married in '94. Once we moved to Lansing, we got established here in the Lansing area with new careers for her and things like that. Kids came along the houses. So we have 2 children. Our children are now 26 and 24 years old. Daughter is a doctor of physical therapy, now lives in North Carolina, and our son is completing his 2nd year of med school at the University of Michigan.
Crazy. And not just houses, you also own other things too.
Yes. I have a hobby. I have a hobby that involves automobiles. Being born and raised in Detroit, my father worked for the Chrysler Corporation. And with that, cars were always very important to our livelihood, things like that. So I have a little bit, I won't call it extensive, but I have a car hobby, and I have a few vehicles. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, okay, we'll leave it at that. I guess that's fine. One thing I didn't ask you is which MSP recruit school did you graduate from?
I'm out of the 101st Trooper Recruit School. We came in February of '87 and graduated in June of '87.
How many started the recruit school?
There were 106 of us that started the recruit school, and 88 graduated.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. It's crazy to think back to that time.
It goes by fast. You would think in a 31-year career it would be long and arduous, but I look back on it now and it went by extremely fast. And then when I could have taken the natural retirement in 2012 and I went into the drop program and didn't go until 2018, those last 6 years just flew by. Yeah. It was a really good time.
Well, I mean, when you were bouncing down from Mayak to Jackson to Lansing, sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right now, we're going to take a little break, and then we'll come back and we'll chat about basically the shift that went on in radio there, from going from the regular radio communications to the 800 megahertz.
Okay.
So, all right. Thank you.
If a natural disaster comes knocking, how prepared is your family? You can't just close the door on earthquakes, floods, or hurricanes and hope they go away. That's why it's important to make a plan now. Ready.gov/plan has the tools and tips you need to prepare your family for an emergency. So if disaster shows up at your doorstep, you'll be ready. Visit ready.gov/plan and make a plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Regardless of what you have seen or heard, 911 cannot locate you immediately when calling from a cell phone. Knowing your location is very important when calling. This is as simple as knowing the address you're calling from, teaching address information to children, and knowing what street you are on while traveling. Know your location.
Welcome back to our podcast. With us, we have former Michigan State Police Lieutenant Joe Thomas. Welcome back.
Hey, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
You and I were both around when the state made that investment in the radio infrastructure and went over to the 800 megahertz system for MPSCS. For me, and we talked a little bit about this before the interview, but for me at the Adrian Post, I had a state radio, a county radio, a city radio for Adrian City,
right.
And then we also had usually carry around CB radios as well.
Yes.
You remember those kind of times?
I remember that, and I remember going through my training phase. And once I got into the patrol car, it seemed overwhelming how much communication was coming into that car. Like you said, you had the state radio, you had a county radio, and at Flat Rock, we worked at that time Wayne County and Monroe County. And so I can't remember exactly if we had a Wayne County radio, but I remembered having the state radio, the Monroe County radio. We would listen to a scanner, and then oftentimes, depending on who you were working with, you would have a CB radio in the car. So you've got several different types of audio equipment that's popping off at any given time, but you quickly learn, your ear learns which one that radio was, and you tune into it if that was very important to listen to, whether it was a dispatch call or something like that. So, but it was a lot of communication going on.
It was, definitely. And I remember that too, being a young trooper. It was really difficult. I didn't think that would be as big of a challenge as it was until you sit in that car and then you're by yourself and
Absolutely.
You don't have anybody sitting in the car with you telling you
Did you hear that?
Yes, exactly. Yes, your senior officer saying, did you hear that? Did you hear what the county said? And you're like, no, I wasn't paying attention to that. I was listening to the state radio.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that was a challenge.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure when you were stationed down there at Flat Rock, did you also get to train troopers too?
Yes,
as well?
I was.
Okay.
I had become a senior officer, was what we called them at the time. I had become a senior officer probably. I remember being a senior officer for 2 classes after me. So I'd become a training officer within the first year of being a trooper down there, because Flat Rock was one of those posts at the time. Flat Rock was being turned around from a disciplinary post to becoming a training post. And because we had Wayne County and Monroe County, you could do traffic in Wayne County with I-75, 275, and 94, or you could be a complaint car working in Monroe County where we were dispatched from the county.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, different world, but it
Yes.
was it had become a good training site, and I enjoyed, like I said, I enjoyed my 8 years down there. Worked with a lot of good troops, and there are a lot of good memories from being a new trooper down there.
Now, was it when you were stationed at the Flat Rock Post? Was that when the big, when the big? I'm trying to remember
Flight
correctly here. But
255?
yes, exactly. I was going to say.
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so. There's still days today that I have a hard time driving through the intersection of Middle Belt Road 994.
Wow.
Yes. So I remember that. I remember that incident very, very well.
And that was the crash of it was a 747. Right?
747. There was one surviving child. It was I believe she was 2 years old or something like that. She was an infant at the time, but she was the only survivor. But what a mess of a crash site that was.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
So one thing in talking about the county and the city and the state radios, anytime you had to call for backup.
Yes. Anytime you had to call for backup, sometimes it was a scramble because you may not have been able to get out on the state radio to let our state dispatcher know that we needed backup. So then you jump to the county radio, and you may not have been working in that county, but you knew that maybe the county radio was working, and if they could get some communication to you and get some help to you, you really didn't care what radio was working. You just needed the assistance at the time. So it was a game that we played sometimes, which radio was better to work with. And all I want to do is get out on this radio to get somebody coming to me for assistance. And whether that was assistance for me or assistance for the individual that we were trying to help at the time.
And that all depended on where you were at in the county.
It all depended on where you were at in the county. It all depended sometimes on the intersection, because I know that you had to learn certain dead spots within your post area. And you knew if you were approaching the intersection of Smith and Jones, that's a dead spot. So you want to pull the traffic stop on the other side of that intersection or just prior to that intersection, because you knew if you were in the intersection, you may not get out over the radio. So you had to know these different things within your post area as well.
It's hard to remember back to that, but I know exactly what you're talking about. It's just crazy.
Yeah, but once this new system came along, it was so much nicer knowing that you had a competent radio system, something that you could be sure of once you were out there on patrol. So
where were you stationed at when the new system came on?
When the new system came on, and I was going to ask you, when was the date?
93.
93.
Or excuse me, 95. I apologize.
95.
Yeah, because we're at 30-year anniversary right
so
now. So
in 95, I was assigned to headquarters in
Okay.
recruiting. So I had been away from the real law enforcement work of being a trooper. But when I went back to the Lansing post as a trooper in 97, it was all new to me at that time.
Yeah, then you had to learn the whole new
And I had to learn
system.
a whole new radio system. So
But it was 2 years past there and everything like that. So.
Correct. But it was for me, having come from Flat Rock, coming to headquarters and being away for a couple of years, it was truly a blessing when I got back out to the post, because I remember working here at the Lansing Post in Eaton County, and just being away because we had 3 different counties here in the Lansing Post area. It didn't matter what county I was in, the radio was certain. So that was always a good feeling.
Yeah, and quite a change from when you left the road to going back to the road too.
Because I'll tell you, in being a troop at Flat Rock, there were days when we would have to come into Lansing to headquarters, and you know how you're supposed to notify district as you go from district to district when you're traveling. It was always hard to sometimes catch that radio dispatch center along the way to at least notify them that I've now left Wayne County, I'm out of my post area, I'm now in Livingston County, and I'm heading to headquarters or whatever. So sometimes those communications were scratchy, not clear. This was before cell phones, so we didn't have a phone in the car to call and say, hey, I'm moving through this area and things like that. So, yeah.
Do you remember, I mean, like the first time you were actually able to be in a patrol car and go from one district to another?
Yes.
Without, you know?
Yeah. It was probably after I was at Lansing, and still from Lansing, and being on the ES team was probably one of my times during the agency where I knew I was moving around the state, because being on the ES team and being located here in Lansing, I got to do ES team calls throughout the state of Michigan. And so I would be moving from the 1st district to the 6th district to the 5th district to the 7th district on ES calls. And the vehicles that I was driving were based out of headquarters, but they all had the new radio systems where this was the button that I needed to push, this is the one I needed to communicate on. Or I could always communicate with operations. Yeah, constantly.
Which we were both
Absolutely.
Both of us were at operations at different
Yes.
points. But with the ES team, I can imagine that was a huge improvement.
Yes.
Yeah, to get onto that radio system. So, and working, like you said, at State Police Operations as a lieutenant, I cannot even imagine. Because I obviously didn't work at State Police Operations with the old system.
Correct.
But I can't imagine working on the
I
old
know.
system.
Yeah,
You know?
that would have been an absolute nightmare.
Oh man!
Yeah.
I mean, so many calls, especially ES team calls, bomb squad calls.
Yeah,
you know what I
K9,
mean? K9
things like that.
You were calling districts, 3-4 districts away from Lansing,
Absolutely.
and I can't imagine that. I cannot imagine how you would have done that.
Yeah,
you know?
with an antiquated system that you weren't sure the signal was actually going
Man.
out
Yeah.
or coming back.
That's crazy. Obviously, a long career, 31
Yes,
years.
31 years.
And if you were looking or talking with like students today or anybody who was interested in law enforcement or being a trooper or anything like that, what kind of advice would you give them after having been in for so long?
My advice, and this kind of goes back to even when I was a training officer, is that when you're looking to communicate on the radio, you need to know what it is that you want to say or what assistance that you're going to need. And your communication needs to be clear. It needs to be concise. Okay, very much on point, because you may only get that one opportunity to get that communication out. So I always tell people, stay calm on the radio, okay, because when you're excited and the voice rises or you're not clear, it's harder for the dispatcher to understand what you're saying on the other end, and you don't want them to have to ask you, can you repeat that? Because you may not have the opportunity to repeat it. So that was always my advice, is when you key the mic up, you better be clear, concise, because that may be your one and only opportunity to get that communication out.
Yeah. Well, it was great having you come in today, Joe. I really appreciate it. And thanks for coming in for our 30-year anniversary. Hard to believe that.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Thank you
I
very
appreciate
much.
the invite. It's good seeing you guys again.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
You have been listening to Tune In with MPSCS. This has been the MPSCS 30th Anniversary Edition podcast. Be sure to look us up at www.michigan.gov/MPSCS on YouTube, SoundCloud, on X or Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at MPSCS. You can also subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and Google Podcasts so you never miss an episode. See you next time.